Hello to all. My name is Barbara Tavora Gentil. I work for the Secretariat of the United Nations Forum on Forests, part of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, located at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Together with our partner, the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization, and I'm very happy to see Mr. Ricardo Calderon, the leader of the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization, here with us today. We organized this session about partnerships and collaborations for sustainable forest management. Before we start, I would like to introduce Mrs. Milagre Nuvunga, who will herself introduce our moderator, Mr. Gary Dunning. Milagre is from Mozambique, and she trained as a forester and began her career in her home country's government. She also worked for the United Nations Development Program and for the Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Panel on Forests, which is a predecessor of the United Nations Forum on Forests. And she also worked for the Ford Foundation before her returning to Mozambique to set up MICAIA, a hybrid institution combining a foundation and a social enterprise. Milagre, please, you have the floor. Please come here. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, should I take my mask off? It's my pleasure to be here today, representing the Forest Dialogue this time, not just myself and my institution, but also the Forest Dialogue. What I'll do is first say a few words about the Forest Dialogue itself before I introduce our moderator, Gary Dunning. So, the Forest Dialogue, for those of you who do not know about it, was created in 2000 by a group of civil society and private sector leaders linked to the forest sector. It was created to provide a neutral, multi-stakeholder platform and process focused on developing mutual trust and shared understanding while working towards collaborative solutions to challenges in achieving sustainable forest management and forest conservation around the world. TFD is a platform for multi-stakeholder discussion and collaboration on the most pressing local and global issues facing forests and people. TFD pursues its mission by following a structured, phased approach to each of its initiatives. We first engage a diversity of interests to foster relationships and build around contentious forest issues, or what we call fracture lines. This is a stage, we call this stage building trust. That's what we use this engage stage for. We then move to what we call the explore phase, where we explore the issues at hand and craft a shared understanding of the objectives, challenges, and opportunities ahead. During this phase, we try to foster agreement between participants in any given dialogue. We ultimately seek change through consensus-based collaboration aimed at immediate action and long-term progress. And to do this, we facilitate collaborative action. We have a few leaflets around, and then those who want to know more about TFD and what it does and how it does, where it has done it before, please, we invite you to pick one. Well, having said this, you can understand why we are here today, fostering partnerships and collaboration, forcing the partnerships and collaboration that this event represents. But I wanted just to finish by letting you know how TFD is governed. TFD is driven and governed by its stakeholders. And these stakeholders are represented at each given time by 25 men and women serving as members of its steering committee, of which I'm also a member and now also a co-leader, working alongside Ivone Namikawa, some of you might know her, who is our other Brazilian co-leader who is not able to travel and be with us here today. The steering committee is supported by a strong secretariat, headed by an executive director, who I will have the pleasure to introduce soon, supported by an associate director, a finance officer, and a group of associates who are postgraduate students of the Yale School of the Environment of TFD. Having said this, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you Gary Dunning, who will be moderating this event. Gary is the executive director of the Forest Dialogue, an organization based at Yale University, where he also serves as director of the Forest School at Yale School of Environment, New Haven, USA, a school focused on connecting people, forests, and forestry for a sustainable future. Gary has been working on forest-related issues for over 30 years and leading multi-stakeholder dialogue since 1995. Gary was the founding executive director of Yale University's Global Institute of Sustainable Forestry in 2000 and helped to develop and lead the Yale Forest Forum from 1996 to 2000. He was also the National Roundtable Coordinator for the 7th American Forest Congress and the US liaison to the World Commission on Forests and Sustainable Development. Gary was a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya, where he taught agroforestry and forest extension at Kenya Forestry College. Gary holds a Master's of Forestry degree from Yale University School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. Gary, over to you.
Milagre, thank you so much. I'm usually the person that introduces Milagre because she is our co-leader of the Forest Dialogue, so it's a true honor to have her introduce me in this occasion. It's a pleasure for me to be able to moderate this session. This is an incredibly important issue when we think about making progress on forest issues. Of course, partnerships are key. Engaging individuals and organizations in many different forms, formats, and configurations is how we are going to make progress in forest conservation and sustainable forest management around the world. And in fact, beyond the forest sector, making partnerships with organizations that traditionally may fall outside the forest sector is equally and more important now as we try to address challenges with climate change. So again, it's my pleasure to help moderate this session with the great panel of folks that we have here and folks that will be joining us virtually as well. I want to welcome you all here, the folks that have joined us live and in person here in the hall, but also I understand there is a large group of folks joining us online. So welcome to you all. Let's get started. We have a lot to cover today in this session. So first up, and I think we did have Natalia's poster was up, but first up, we will hear from Natalia Granato. Natalia Granato is a forest engineer and Master of Forest Sciences with 11 years of experience. She serves as Vice President of Forest Women's Network and Manager of the Sustainability and Forest Affairs at IBA, an association that represents the planted forest industry in Brazil, including around 60 companies and state associations. She represents IBA at the International Council of Forests and Paper Associations and at the Advisory Committee on Sustainable Forest-Based Industries of FAO. Also, I know that Natalia is about to make a change, but maybe we'll talk about that later. So Natalia, please, would you present your paper on how Brazilian tree industry can help complying with climate change agenda linked to sustainable development goals, global forest goals, and Brazilian NDC under the Paris Agreement. Natalia, over to you, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here and to... Should I go there? Okay. Am I supposed to come here? I think so.
It's over here. Here. There's a glass. Yeah, go ahead. There are glasses here.
Ah, yeah.
Not these. No? Go ahead, Natalia.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here talking to you about how the Brazilian tree industry can help comply with climate change agenda linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, Global Forest Goals, and also the Brazilian NDC under Paris Agreement. So the whole world is looking at the climate change agenda, and it has gained emergency status. Paris Agreement is the most important mechanism that the globe has proposed itself to achieve. Forests, as sustainable bioeconomy player, are in the core of the discussion. The world needs the reduction of greenhouse gas concentration at the atmosphere. To do so, we have two complementary ways: reducing emissions and also increasing removals. The forest-based industry in Brazil holds 9.5 million hectares of planted trees and set aside 6 million hectares of native vegetation for conservation purposes. Plantations are established in degraded areas, which is important for restoration of services like carbon removals and storage, conservation of soil, habitat for biodiversity, etc. This paper aims at showing how Brazilian tree industry supports the Brazilian NDC, some of the SDGs and UNFF goals. The national determined contribution of Brazil under Paris Agreement proposes to reduce 43% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2025 and 50% by 2030 with the baseline of 2005. These numbers were updated at the last COP26 in Glasgow. So I apologize for the numbers outdated in the slides, but these are the correct ones. Trees are the most efficient sequester of carbon and responsible for 4 vectors of mitigation. First one, remove carbon from the atmosphere. Second, storing this carbon in planted and preserved forests. Third, avoiding emissions during industrial production. And fourth, storing carbon in final products. The 15.5 million of hectares that we have with forests in Brazil, considering for commercial purposes and also for conservation purposes, are storing 4.5 billion tons of CO2. Regardless the difference between stock and flow of carbon, the carbon stock of the sector in Brazil, it's about 2% of the national, regardless the difference between stock and flow, the carbon stock of the sector is about 2% of the national emissions in Brazil, which is 3 times that the whole Brazil emitted in over the year of 2016. Substitution is also an important role for all forest-based products. To give you an example, paper products such as aseptic, shelf-stable liquid, packaging, and books, they store approximately 45% of carbon. Laminate flooring and wooden tables store about 47% of carbon. When it comes to energy, forest biomass has relevant performance in low-carbon economy. Currently, 89% of energy matrix of the sector in Brazil is renewable, in which 73% comes from black liquor and 16% from forest biomass. It's estimated that for every 1 million ton of pulp produced in Brazil, 4 million gigajoules of electricity are generated. This industry produces 200,000 gigajoules of bioelectricity per day, equivalent to 80% of the energy needed in São Paulo city, the biggest one in Latin America. Brazil is the bigger producer of eucalyptus charcoal worldwide, coming also from forest plantations. Traditionally, charcoal is used for cooking. However, in Brazil, it's used for steel industry instead of coal. So this is the substitution. This is bioeconomy. It is estimated that 1.5 ton of CO2 is avoided for each 1 ton of pig iron produced in Brazil. In 2020, the use of charcoal avoided the emissions of 13 million tons of CO2 equivalent in relation to the global average production. Such contribution has gained attention from an initiative called Sustainable Steelmaking Product from UNDP, which is unique from Brazil and has significant importance in social, environmental, and economic aspects. As a conclusion of this paper, we can say that forest-based industry in Brazil has clear benefits and commitments with the NDC of Brazil under the Paris Agreement, the SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy, the SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, SDG 13, the urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, and also the UNFF Global Forest Goal number 1, reverse the loss of forest cover worldwide through sustainable forest management, including protection, restoration, afforestation, reforestation, and increased efforts to prevent forest degradation and contribute to the global effort of addressing climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Natalia. It's obviously quite clear that the Brazilian forest industry has a very strong role to play, as does the industry worldwide, in addressing matters related to climate change. I am happy to see that they are definitely working to get in front of these challenges. But perhaps a little later we'll talk about, and when Jose Carlos also presents, we'll talk about the partnerships that you need as an industry to be able to do that. At the moment, we'll move on to our paper presentation. I believe it's remote, I hope. To present the paper is Carlos Salinas Montes, and Carlos is the Director of Forest Policy of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. So if we have Carlos. Pardon? Yeah, I know, I see that. Maybe somebody can let me know if we have Carlos ready to present the paper. If not, we can move on. Okay. Maybe. To move on? Okay. When we get Carlos on the line, we will come back. So, moving on with the program. Now we're going to talk about and hear from and learn about 4 really unique initiatives that really demonstrate the type of partnerships and collaborations that are necessary to make progress in the sector. First off, it's my pleasure to introduce Ricardo Calderon with the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization. Ricardo is a forester by profession who has served in the government of the Republic of the Philippines for 33 years. He started as a field forester, community environment and natural resources officer, provincial environment and natural resources officer, regional technical director of forestry, regional executive director, bureau director, and most recently as assistant secretary. He's held positions as the Assistant Secretary of Department of Environment and Natural Resources of the Philippines, designate for staff bureaus, and later as the Assistant Secretary for Climate Change and Director of Biodiversity Management Bureau in concurrent capacity, handling programs and policies in protected areas and biodiversity conservation, coastal and marine management, and wildlife resources conservation before joining the Secretariat in January 2021. Ricardo holds a master's degree in forestry, majoring in forest resources management with a minor in silviculture and forest influences from the University of the Philippines. So Ricardo, please share with us about the AFCO partnership.
Thank you, Gary. Allow me to present on behalf of the AFCO Secretariat and our 16 member countries, we would like to express our gratitude and congratulations to our global partner, the United Nations Forum on Forests, for inviting the Asian Forest Cooperation Organization as one of the panelists in this very important session on partnerships and collaboration for sustainable forest management. Next slide, please. Next slide. This will be the content of my presentation, but I'll be highlighting more on and introduce the APOCO Green Partnership Platform for the private sector investment. Next slide. The Asian Forest Cooperation Organization is a treaty-based intergovernmental organization that is committed to strengthening forest cooperation in Asia and taking action to promote sustainable forest management, biodiversity conservation, and address the impact of climate change. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Presently, with 16 member countries composed of 13 parties, including Bhutan, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Lao PDR, Mongolia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Republic of Korea, Thailand, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam, as well as 3 observers, Kyrgyzstan, Malaysia, and Singapore, granted permanent observer status during the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly on December 2020 and approved headquarters agreement with the Republic of Korea on June 2021. Next slide, please. With 36 ongoing projects being implemented by our member countries from our grant portfolio, currently valued at $77.6 million, our programs and projects are guided by our 5 strategic priorities as defined in our Strategic Plan 2019-2023, such as initiating customized restoration and reforestation models, supporting research and development in climate change adaptation approaches, introducing systematic management on forest-related disasters, local livelihood improvement and community-based small enterprise development, strengthening institutional capabilities, diversifying resources, and promoting regional actions. Next slide. There are significant features of APOCO programs and projects as we implement across different forest ecosystems and functions, including tropical, temperate, and mangrove forests. We apply the use of different technologies and approaches to the restoration and rehabilitation of degraded forest ecosystems, including genetic research on tree improvement and agroforestry development. There are common approaches to all programs and projects, most notably of which include multi-stakeholder participation, integration of livelihood and community-based enterprise development, capacity building of stakeholders. Next slide, please. Next slide. Aside from country-driven projects developed and being implemented by our member parties, we implemented multi-country projects with one party as the lead country in the implementation in order to develop collaboration and cooperation, including exchange of expertise among our member countries. For the year 2022, we have started the implementation of the 5-year $4 million regional program on non-timber forest products in partnership with Non-Timber Forest Products Asia on improved local community livelihood through increased income from non-forest products, modeling community-based enterprise, and the 5-year $8.5 million program entitled Capacity Building on Enhancing Resilience to Forest Fire and Local Livelihood in Cambodia, Lao PDR, Myanmar, and Vietnam in partnership with the ASEAN-Korea Cooperation Fund. Next slide, please. SDG 17 on Partnership for the Goals emphasized the need to revitalize global partnership for sustainable development. The United Nations Strategic Plan on Forest 2017-2030 highlighted the need for fostering of international cooperation, cross-sectoral cooperation, as well as public-private enterprise partnership. In response, APOCO, as a regional intergovernmental organization, developed our Green Partnership Platform as a private sector enterprise engagement and investment platform, fully aligned with APOCO's Strategic Plan on Forests and Sustainable Development Goals, International Climate Regime, and Initiative. Allow me to introduce this Green Partnership Platform. Next slide, please. APOCO's Green Partnership Platform consists of 6 major programs that will address the need to create synergy with the private sector in partnership in the Republic of Korea to jointly work with us by providing resources in order to rehabilitate, protect, and conserve forests of Asia, improve forest governance through capacity development in order to sustain strategic carbon balance, biodiversity conservation, and provide livelihood opportunities for forest-dependent people, and at the same time, sustain industrial development and private sector investment. Presented during the 5th session of the Assembly in 2021, the Green Partnership Platform was formally launched in February 2022 in the APOCO Corporate Forum held in Seoul and was attended by 123 participants from private corporations, associations, diplomatic communities in the Republic of Korea. Allow me to briefly introduce the 6 major programs. Next slide, please. Saving Asia's Vulnerable Ecosystems, or SAVE program. The biodiversity of Asia is one of the richest in the world, with 36 biodiversity hotspots with a significant level of threats due to rapid economic development and anthropogenic climate change impact. Activities include mapping and valuation, restoration and monitoring, including the development of nature-based solutions. Next slide. Next slide, please. Livelihood Improvement through Forest-Based Enterprise Program, or LIFE. Poverty reduction is one of the top priorities in order to protect and conserve our forest resources, as poverty is more serious in the upland, including among forest-dependent people. Upland and forest-based dependent people will be involved in the development of small to medium-scale businesses to make them part of the value chain from production to marketing of local products, including non-timber forest products. Next slide. The Climate Link Program. In 2019, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, noted that all assessed modeled pathways that limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or below 2 degrees Celsius require land-based mitigation and land use change, including different combinations of reforestation, afforestation, and reduce deforestation. Please note that deforestation alone contributes to about 20% of the global greenhouse gas emission. Aligned with the development of a focused forest carbon partnership strategy, this aims to provide strategic guidance on private-public partnership on forest carbon management and unlock the potential of environmental, social, and governance investments of the private sector as a climate finance strategy. Feasibility studies are currently in the pipeline in APOCO member countries, the Philippines and Mongolia, in partnership with the private sector based in Seoul, Republic of Korea. Earth Garden Program. By 2050, 68% of the global population will live in cities. As an experience in the COVID-19 pandemic, forests and green spaces contribute to enhancing public health. This program will connect humans and nature, and at the same time improve the environment and contribute to resilience of cities. This includes the development of botanical gardens for ecotourism and community green spaces. Pilot project in Siem Reap, Cambodia on ASEAN Korea Garden is on the pipeline that will highlight tropical forest biodiversity, ecotourism, culture, friendship with Republic of Korea. The Landmark Program 2.0. This is designed to sustain the gain of the ongoing APOCO First Landmark Program that has so far produced 7 doctoral degree graduates and 14 master's graduates from 10 universities in the Republic of Korea. Landmark Program will cover all parties. Other components include Science and Technology Exchange Program, Fellowship Program for middle-level managers from our member parties. In order to improve forest governance in member countries, we need to develop young forestry professionals and forestry practitioners. Next slide, please. Landscape Partnership Asia, or LPA, in partnership with C4ICRAP and the Global Evergreening Alliance, LPA aims to bring 10 million hectares of degraded drylands and drought-prone areas under integrated dryland management by 2030. APOCO plays a dual role as founding partner and secretariat of the partnership. Landscape Partnership Asia is an evolving multi-stakeholder platform that seeks to implement performance-based investment in restoring Asian drylands and drought-prone areas. Currently, there is no formal United Nations systems-wide mechanism to enhance cooperation and coherence on forest-related issues. However, regional cooperations play a very important strategic role by linking global mechanisms and initiative with national action. A focused regional approach could further facilitate cross-border cooperation, knowledge sharing, capacity development, strengthening dialogue and collaboration in the field of forestry, biodiversity conservation, and climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ricardo. It's really interesting to hear about the development of AFCO. There's a lot going on, a lot of members, a lot of actors. It'll be terrific to follow the progress as AFCO continues to make inroads in these challenges. We're going to take questions at the end, so please keep your questions as we move through the program. I think we'll have plenty of time. Now, I think we're going to, Carlos Salinas Montez, I think, is going to join us by recorded video, not live. So if somebody could key up his video presentation on his paper, I would appreciate that. The paper is ACTO Forest Regional Program for the Amazonia Basin and region.
The 8 countries sharing the biome in the exercise of their sovereignty signed in 1978 the Amazon Cooperation Treaty, ACT, with a view to a harmonious and sustainable development of their Amazonian territories, seeking a better quality of life for their inhabitants. The creation of the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, reaffirmed the treaty guidelines to guarantee the fulfillment of its goals and premises. ACTO develops and implements coordinated joint actions in the regional, holistic, and strategic vision building synergy among governments, multilateral organizations, cooperation agencies, the scientific community, civil society organizations, productive sectors, and the whole society.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am Carlos Salinas, Director responsible for Forestry Matters at the ACTO Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. I want to thank the Secretariat of the World Forum on Forests and all the other organizations involved in the coordination of this side event within the framework of the World Forest Congress for its invitation. Below, I am pleased to present the new ACTO Regional Forest Program for the Amazon Basin and region, an initiative developed and approved last year by the 8 member countries that make up the organization and which constitutes a clear example of association and regional collaboration for sustainable forest management. One-fifth of the world's forest area is located in the territory comprised of the 8 countries that make up ACTO, of which approximately 70%, close to 544 million hectares, is found in the Amazon region. Given the importance of the Amazon forest due to their crucial role in the fight against climate change and the need to face the continuous risks they suffer, such as deforestation and degradation, and promote a sustainable development scheme according to characteristics of the region and needs of each country, in 2021, ACTO formulated a new guiding instrument for long-term regional cooperation, the Regional Forest Program of the ACTO for the Amazon Basin and region, which will promote the conservation and sustainable forest management of the Amazonian forests through actions of coordination, cooperation, and implementation among the member countries of ACTO, and develop the necessary capacities to follow the new requirements and deadlines of the global agendas of forests and biodiversity. Through this program, ACTO seeks to 1. Promote sustainable forest management. 2. Facilitate dialogue at the member country level. 3. Promote the formulation and implementation of forest policies in the member countries with regional influences and aimed at better governance, sustainable forest management, control of the causes of deforestation and forest degradation, forest fires, and forest recovery, among others. 4. Formulate and implement forestry programs, projects, and initiatives promoting regional cooperation that incorporates the knowledge and experiences developed in the region. 5. Building and strengthen synergies with countries with recognized experience and/or lessons learned in forest management, multilateral organizations, cooperation agencies, scientific communities, and other actors in general. 6. Support the development of a regional forest information system based on data provided by the member country themselves within the framework of the initiatives that ACTO has been developing so as not to duplicate the efforts. 7. Take advantage of ACTO knowledge, management, and information exchange platforms. For its implementation, the Regional Forest Program is based on 6 components, each with strategic results and actions, which will be developed voluntarily and will respect the sovereignty and national laws of each country.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we'll move on now to the Kitchen Connection Alliance. Do we have Ms. Erlene Cruz? She's going to present remotely.
Yes. Good evening. Good morning.
Hi, Erlene. Nice to see you. I hope you can see us.
Yes, I can see you well. I'm
let
wondering
me
if
just-
I can kindly
Sorry,
share
let
my
me just do a quick introduction if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Arlene Cruz is the founder and director of the Kitchen Connection organization. Kitchen Connection allows lay and professional cooks to host or participate in live, online, and in-person discussions and interactive cooking classes in support of a better food system and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Arlene completed her master's degree in social entrepreneurship and food studies at the Gallatin School of New York University, where she is now a visiting professor focusing on food insecurity at the New York University College of Global and Public Health. So Arlene, welcome. And if you are in New York now, I think it is rather late your time, so we're very happy that you could join us. Do you want, you have slides, I believe. There we go. Arlene, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gary, and thank you so much to all of the organizers for hosting and for allowing me to take part in this wonderful event that means so much to me personally and professionally. I'm wondering if I can kindly share my screen from my computer as we discussed in the chat. If it's not possible, then we can go with this format, but I'll apologize for any challenges that might happen with the different PowerPoint versions.
No worries. I don't know if it's possible to share your screen, but I'll let the technicians answer that question. Maybe, Arlene, you should go with what you see.
Sure, absolutely. I'll get started. So we know that the food system contributes to up to 30% of all greenhouse gases. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of carbon. And so we're aware of all of these facts. We're here gathered together because we deeply care about this challenge. And we know that the food system contributes heavily to deforestation. So we're not going to go into the facts and the data, but rather how we as individuals can actually positively influence this data to move us in the right direction globally. It really starts with a cultural shift with advocacy and education. We can tell people to eat more plant-based foods, but if their palates are not trained or inclined culturally or biologically to want and to demand for these foods, then we won't see a positive shift. So it really begins at home. It begins in our kitchens. As mentioned, I direct a project called Kitchen Connection, which is supported by the government of the Netherlands and the Rockefeller Foundation. It worked closely with the UN Department of Global Communications Youth Steering Committee, which really incubated this project and allowed it to flourish within the UN Department of Global Communications. We focus on youth because youth often bear the brunt of a weak food system. And we know that youth are often victims of the food system, but rather than seeing youth as victims, our goal is to help young people like myself, I'm not that old, be protagonists of the food system rather than victims. And so the way that that is done is through advocacy, through empowerment in online and in-person mechanisms. If we can,
I think you might be able to, yeah. Why don't you go ahead and try to share your screen?
Perfect. Okay, so I was just here. Are you able to see?
Not yet. There we go. I think we all see that now. Perfect.
Thank you. And so our goal is to, through advocacy, empower women and those who are disenfranchised, including youth, to actually be protagonists of the food system. We do so through online and in-person engagements. You can see here, we're having an online cooking class at the UN Climate Conference in Katowice, Poland. This was in 2018, so before COVID, luckily, but we were integrating online and in-person engagements before the Zoom boom, which is really a beautiful way to actually connect over food. Here you see an engagement where we have 3 chefs from the African region hosting a cooking challenge with university students who are serving as their sous chefs. And it's a way to discuss the ways in which grains can be drought resistant, like the wonderful fonio grain in Senegal. We host online cooking classes with over 150 countries represented through home cooks and professional chefs alike. Here you see an engagement at the UN Climate Summit in 2019, where we have a chef in Nigeria guiding us through a recipe and helping us to eat in a more climate-friendly way. How does this work align with the UN agenda? Well, our goal is really to bring the data and the messages of the UN outside of the UN. You can see our features on local and international news channels, as well as participation in international events as examples of that. I'll play just a brief video of one of our engagements during the UN Climate Summit. This was with IFAD in 2019, and similarly with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, we had another engagement with a similar participatory element. Play the full video for the sake of time, but you see 6 different teams that were asked to cook recipes that were appropriate to the local region in 30 minutes and representing cultures that were threatened by climate change. Because what we see is that it's not only food systems that are threatened, it's cultures and nations and regions that are threatened through the loss of these food products. And so this was a way to have a visceral connection to these conversations that we have, which often entail, talking about families that are struggling to feed their families. But how is it like to actually cook when you only have 1 can of beans, but 4 people to feed? How creative can you actually be? And having that visceral connection, again, really helps to educate all of us when we're talking about these challenges. We were featured on the UN News for International Women's Day, really looking at the way that women often bear the brunt of a weak food system, similar to youth. And we discussed the ways in which women are negatively impacted by hunger and food insecurity. In fact, we often see that women are the ones who are cooking in the home, and they are the ones who are disproportionately then affected by a lack of access to land rights. We are not seeing women as the Michelin chefs on TV. It's shifting a little bit now, but traditionally there was this disparity between the women cooking at home, but not able to display their culture and their skills prominently on the global stage. So there are these disparities that exist, and so our goal is to support women to share their culture and their recipes and their delicious, meals. I know that Ambassador Everton from Brazil is here, and we have a big Brazilian audience, but Brazilian cuisine is beautiful and rich in terms of climate-friendly dishes, as well as food that's supportive of human and planetary health. So coincidentally, we have Chef Denise here who's sharing her feijoada dish, which is a bean dish. And we know culturally that beans are a great protein source. They require less water than traditional protein sources to grow and are very supportive of human health. So these are just examples of how women can actually share their cultures and extend that to improve human and planetary health. As part of our educational partnerships with the UN Department of Global Communications, we teach a class at New York University that starts with a trip to the United Nations headquarters in New York and educates the students on conflict, climate change, and economics impacting the food system. It ends with the students presenting their final solutions at the United Nations, and wonderful projects like hydroponic solutions in Sudan and in deserts have surfaced as a result of it. We're very grateful that partners from the World Food Program and FAO attends this presentation and inculcates some of the projects into their work plans. So it's a beautiful full circle experience where the students are not only learning, but also contributing to the system. And it goes to show that, when young people, including myself, are empowered to make a difference, we don't necessarily need a PhD in a specific area. We simply need the passion and the drive and the support. And that's what this goes to show. Here we have students learning how to make acai and learning about the nutritious properties as well as the planetary health properties, but also learning about the culture and how it is actually something that is impacting the farmers locally as a result of an increase in demand. Food has this incredible power to bring people together and to have us engage in conversations that go beyond the food. We brought Israel and Palestine together in a beautiful gastro-diplomatic effort where a chef from Israel and Palestine cooked 2 versions of the same shakshuka as a way to indeed talk about the conflict. Our conversations are not to shy away from difficult conversations, but to rather enhance them and to use food as a way to delve into these deeper conversations. Here we have students in Brazil learning how to make a dish with a chef in Singapore and Nigeria. And here are students at the French Embassy in New York learning how to make a dish in Algeria with a chef who was guiding us through a recipe virtually and helping us to understand Francophone culture at large. Our goal is to learn more about how to actually educate others in terms of how to eat better for themselves and the planet. And so it is a bottom-up approach to education. That is why we initiated a tool called Table Talks with the UN Department of Global Communications Civil Society Unit, which allows young people to come together in a non-recorded Zoom meeting to discuss things that are impacting the food system. So that people come together and vote on a specific topic that is important to them. And it is not recorded purposefully so that people can come and speak as they are. What we were finding is that in traditional UN platforms, as well as in formal settings, young people are asked to come and speak, but they're asked to prepare very formal remarks. And it is counterintuitive to the nature of engaging youth, which already come with experiences and are prone to taking risks and actually making a difference by nature of their experience. I'm very excited to share for the first time that we developed a cookbook in support of the United Nations with the support of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, as well as with the government of the Netherlands and the Rockefeller Foundation. It features 75 recipes from around the world with chefs like Massimo Bottura, Daniel Boulud, Jose Andres, as well as farmers and indigenous peoples from around the world who we're very happy are featuring chefs that are supportive of both human and planetary health. It is featuring Kimball Musk, who's Elon Musk's brother, as well as Ambassador Hans Hugeveen in his former position. And so in addition to the nutrition calculations of the recipes, which we conducted for all of the recipes. Here you see all of the beautiful faces of the book, as well as the nutrition calculations. We conducted the carbon calculations of all of the recipes. And it was unsurprising that the lowest emitting recipes are actually those that are plant forward. We did not exclude meat from the cookbook. In fact, we wanted to be culturally sensitive, and so there are various meat recipes. And this was selected by a committee of culinary experts, which I'm not a culinary expert, although I really do have an interest in food. So I did not have a hand on that process, but it was very interesting to see the other side of it, which showed that climate-friendly dishes do have a lower proximity of carbon emissions than those that are heavy in terms of meat. And so what this shows is that globally we do need to eat less meat, although some regions, of course, can benefit from a higher meat consumption for human health. What we also found through the book is that in the highest emitting countries in the world, we emit, through our food choices, 3 kilograms of carbon dioxide every single day. That means that the average meal emits about 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide per day. And the cookbook has a 58.6% less carbon emission than the average meal in the highest emitting countries. And that is just by nature of selecting recipes that are more plant forward in nature. So it is very beautiful to see that the data is reflective of that. We did some market research prior to embarking on the cookbook journey. And we found that people, especially during COVID lockdowns, were cooking more from home. And so this presents us with a beautiful opportunity to educate people on how to actually eat better for themselves and for the planet. With that, we thank our collaborators, and we are here hoping to be able to collaborate with you. The space is very big. The challenge is also very big, and we hope to solve it together. That's the only way we can. So thank you so much again for having me, and I look forward to working closely with all of you. There is our contact details in case anyone wants to get in touch. Thank you very much.
Excellent, Erlene. Thank you so much for that really interesting and compelling example from, where'd you go? From the food sector. I wonder, I would like to ask maybe later, if we have time at the end, there's a lot of discussion in our sector about forest foods and forest farming. And I wonder if this group is interested to explore collaborations on that front. But Arlene, we'll come back to you in a minute. We'll go through the other presenters as well. One thing though, I just want to reflect on, obviously you're using Zoom to engage a lot. I think most of us will agree that perhaps if there is an upside to the pandemic we have all experienced and are experiencing, it's the development of this engagement tool that perhaps was rather early on or rudimentary, or at least one that we didn't all access as much as we do now. But I know from my organization, and I know most of the organizations sitting here, we're able to do a lot more remote engagement than we would have ever imagined before. So actually, this kind of engagement is incredibly important for building partnerships and accessing communities and folks that wouldn't otherwise be able to engage. And it sounds like your outreach to students or to youth and to women has been really helped by that tool. So anyway, that's great. Okay, we're going to move on now to the Brazilian Coalition on Climate, Forests, and Agriculture. I'm going to introduce both our speakers. One of them will join us remotely, and the other is here in person with us. Remotely is Everton Vieira Vargas. He's currently the International Advisor of the government, Ambassador Everton Vieira Vargas is the International Advisor of the government of the state of Pará since 2019. He joined the Brazilian Foreign Service in 1977. He graduated at Instituto Rio Branco, the Brazilian Diplomatic Academy, in 1977. He holds a degree in law from the University of the Federal District in 1977. He has a Master's of Arts degree in International Relations from Boston University, 1984, and his PhD in Sociology from University of Brasilia in 2001. As a diplomat, he held several positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Brazilian embassies abroad. He was Brazilian ambassador to Germany from 2009 to 2013, Argentina 2013 to 16, and the EU from 2016 to 2018. I also want to introduce our other speaker from the Brazilian coalition. That's Ambassador Jose Carlos de Fonseca Jr. Ambassador Fonseca is the executive director of IBA, the Brazilian tree industry. He's been in the Brazilian Forest Service for almost 4 decades before joining IBA 3 years ago. Throughout his career, he's held many postings abroad and within Brazil. A former ambassador to Myanmar, he was also the deputy head of mission in New Delhi in India. I have to note, with pride, he is also a member of the steering committee of the Forest Dialogue. Since 2021, Ambassador Fonseca has become the co-facilitator of the Coalition Brazil Climate, Forest, Agriculture, representing the private sector within this multi-stakeholder platform comprised of over 300 members from the private sector, NGOs, and the academic world. I think we're going to begin with Ambassador Vieira Vargas, if he is with us. Hello, Ambassador. Welcome.
Hello, Mr. Dunning. Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to join you all, and well, a good afternoon to all of you in Seoul. Well, I'm going to speak about the second largest state of the Brazilian Federation, which is the state of Pará in the Amazon. It's a state of 1.2 million square kilometers, and it corresponds to 25% of the area of the Amazon as it is legally defined here in Brazil. It's a state that has a huge deforestation, has seen huge deforestation last years. Between 2008 and 2021, deforestation was equivalent to 42% of all deforestation detected in the Brazilian Amazon in this period. But one must know that only 33% of the lands in the state of Pará are under the state jurisdiction. The other 67% are under federal jurisdiction, which make certain restrictions or certain division of labor in terms of countering the illegal acts that lead to deforestation and fires. 70% of the territory is covered by natural vegetation, and 27% is by the Amazon rainforest. The state houses 40,000 plant species. It's one of the huge states in Brazil in terms of biodiversity. Pará is the Brazilian state that emits the most greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, almost 19% of all Brazilian emissions. At the same time, it is the 5th state in exports in Brazil. Mining corresponds to 85% of the volume of exports. Other main economic activities are beef production, soybeans, cocoa, nuts, timber, and also acai that Erlin just mentioned to us. And I must say, perhaps a little bit out of my notes here, that Pará is one of the gourmet centers in Brazil. It has a very typical cuisine, most of it from ingredients from the forest, and for sure this is something that would attract a project like Erling's here in Brazil. The state has launched an ambitious program called Amazon Now State Plan, created in 2020, and it's a platform to develop actions and programs to support innovative solutions to face climate, environmental, and socio-economic challenges that are not small in the state. The state, by the way, has 9 million people and spread over all this surface that corresponds to Germany, France, and Portugal together. The main idea of this Amazon Now is that the fight against deforestation fires, as well as the fight for environmental and land tenure regulation, although essential, do not enable us to fully face this socio-economic challenge. Nor would these actions be sufficient to spur transition towards a carbon-neutral economy in an inclusive, fair, and sustainable way. So one needs to combine sustainable forest management with the fight against serious challenges like climate change and the loss of biodiversity. I note these two challenges, but there are many others that are very important for the state and for the people of the state. As regards climate change, the purpose is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from forest conversion and land use by at least 37% by 2030, in relation to the average between 2014 and 2018. From that date, we expect to improve performance by reducing emissions by 43% by December 2035 to become carbon neutral. Our overall ambition is to neutralize 86% of the total emissions of the state of Pará by December 2035. While we seek to progressively reduce deforestation, we also increase vegetation regeneration by 5.65 million hectares by 2030. With additional support from domestic efforts until December 2035, the aim is to increase this regeneration to 7.41 million hectares by December 2035. This represents about 40% of Brazil's target under the national determined contribution. To achieve this restoration goal, a set of integrating legal instruments and mechanisms was created to promote recovery of native vegetation on a large scale, which implies the establishment of a restoration plan that is already being implemented and also being bettered by as we try to implement it. At operational level, the Amazon Now State Plan seeks to base integrated state actions on three lines: strengthening of environmental monitoring, licensing, and enforcement, the so-called command and control, with the use of the state force to combat deforestation, and a migration to online environmental licensing. Second, land and land property and environmental planning through the Regularized Pará program, focused on stimulating environmental regulation and on actions to legalize land tenure for farmers enrolled in the program. And this is a very important action that has started this year And I must say that I am very proud of this program because a month ago, we had a major event in the hinterland of Pará when 1,000 titles were delivered on a single day to small farmers in the backyards of Pará. And finally, low-carbon socio-economic development through the Sustainable Territories and Bioeconomy Down-to-Earth programs. To become a sustainable and long-term public policy, the Amazon Now State Plan has an important funding component, the Eastern Amazon Fund, created by the government, but that is a private mechanism with public governance. Fumbio, a renowned environmental fund manager here in Brazil, is its implementing agency. In 6 months, the FAO, from its initials in Portuguese, Fundo da Amazônia Oriental, has already raised 11 million reais, something like $2 million. The goal is to reach 300 million reais in 4 years. That corresponds in today's currency rates, $60 million. The main sources of the resources are private bonds, asset investment, and voluntary contributions to give scale to projects. To build a robust climate and environmental policy, the state of Pará has been striving to structure its REDD+ jurisdictional system to meet the requirements needed to attract resources from payments for results, as well as from the voluntary carbon market. In 2021, the state's interest was submitted to the LEAF coalition based on the actions of the Amazon Now Plan and its scalability.
Ambassador, Ambassador, sorry to interrupt, but we really need to move on. We're running a bit late on time, so if I can ask you to maybe 1 more minute, if possible. I apologize.
Okay, no, I'm finishing.
Okay.
Oh, the other area that we are working is regarding bioeconomy, and that involves research, that involves genetic heritage and production chains and sustainable business. And a guarantee fund has also been established for small bioeconomy producers of around $8 million. Well, the model of integrated multi-pronged action, the government of the state of Pará has formally made the commitment to become carbon neutral jurisdiction by 2036. And we endorsed this intention by signing out the commitment to race to zero. Deforestation and the loss of biodiversity are complex problems, and it is impossible to solve them through isolated or sporadic actions without due attention to the prevailing economic rationale under or dissociated from the challenge of eradicating hunger and poverty, elements that are still very present in the life of the Amazon people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Vieira. Sorry we had to move along there. Maybe quickly, Ambassador Fonseca, if you have anything you'd like to add related to the coalition. And sorry, just before you begin, to the folks still with us in the hall, we're going to go a few minutes over. We had a late start, of course. We don't have too much time, but we're going to move through the program as quickly as we can, so your patience. But of course, we understand if you need to move on. Anyway, Ambassador Fonseca, please.
Thank you, Gary. It's very nice to see my friend, my dear friend, Ambassador Everton, running late shift after midnight in Brazil and doing it brilliantly as always. I thank UNFF, my dear friend and colleague Barbara, also for this opportunity of being here today, wearing my hat as co-facilitator of the Brazil Coalition on Climate forests, and agriculture. IBA, as we have seen through Natalia's presentation, is the Brazilian tree industry, and we have become very used to understanding that there is only so much that we can do by ourselves, even considering the size, the dimension of our sector, as we have seen the numbers presented by Natalia. But to carry on our mission, our purposes, we do need to resort to wider coalitions and partnerships. So we are very used to doing it. I'm a proud member as an IBA representative of TFD, as Gary just mentioned, and we work hard to be part of ICFPA, ACSFI within FAO. We have a very close partnership with UNFF proper. And in Brazil, we do have this partnership with the Brazilian Coalition, in which we have over 300 members representing the private sector, finance, the academic world, the society through NGOs, and it has been a very successful experience, a true multi-stakeholder platform in which we sit around the table with people who do not necessarily think like we do. The wealth, the richness of the experience in the coalition, pretty much along the lines of the TFD itself, is that we are around the table, coming from different walks of life with different perspectives, but having in common the idea of building convergences, of building not even necessarily consensus, but convergence around major issues. The coalition in Brazil has established itself as a reference in terms of the sustainability agenda for advocacy within the country, abroad as well, and also for conducting more technical and very dense studies through our different committees and working groups. And we have a very interesting website. I invite all of you to access it with our publication, with our statements. And we, even before, the coalition has been around for almost 6 years now, even before our present time, in which Brazil is undergoing a very challenging moment in terms of its sustainability agenda and its foreign image, as we all know. The fact is that before this difficult period, and right now even more, the coalition has been a light to illuminate some of those challenges and presenting a rationale, an ability to formulate, to articulate, and to address important issues for the Brazilian society, not only in the present, but for the future generations. Thank you very much. Of course, we are running late, and my brief would be this short, so we can almost come to a conclusion in the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Fonseca. I really appreciate the brief remarks, but I do want to mention that personally, I've been following the work of the coalition since it began, because some of the folks that helped establish and create the coalition and develop its stakeholder engagement processes were involved in an organization called the Brazilian Forest Dialogue, or the Forest Dialogue in Brazil, a sister organization to ours, the Forest Dialogue. So there's a strong connection there, and I really value the hard work that they're doing and the fact that it expanded beyond forest to agriculture and bigger questions. So thank you for that. Quickly, we're going to move on now and hear about the Forest for Fashion initiative. I think Paola Deda, Paola, is she with us virtually? I believe she is. Wow. Or video, sorry. Paola, who will join us by video. Very quick introduction. Paola is currently the Director of Forest, Land and Housing Division at the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe in Geneva. She has more than 20 years of work experience with the UN, where she held different positions, including UN ECE as chief of the UNECE FAO Forestry and Timber Section. Prior to joining the UN, Paola worked as researcher at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver and the University of California, Berkeley. Paola is an architect and holds a PhD in territorial environmental planning. Before we roll the video, please let me also introduce Ana Belén Noriega. Ana Belén Noriega is the Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer of PEFC Spain. She has vast experience in international forest policy, working as an international forest policy advisor to the Ministry of Environment of Spain since 1999, and is also a member of several advisory and expert groups for the EC, UNECE, Forest Communicators Network, UNCEFACT, Forest Europe, Green Jobs, National Forest Certification South America, and on. Actually, there's several there. Just to also conclude Anna's introduction, as a forestry engineer and MBA in project management, she began her professional career leading her own environmental consulting firm in the establishment and monitoring of health control and conservation networks in protected natural areas and national parks. So please, let us roll the video from Paola.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting us to present during this session on partnership and collaboration for sustainable forest management. Let me introduce you to our work on Forests for Fashion. That's the name we gave to the initiative. That really helped us focus on our work on forest products and why the forest products are important, in particular as wood and other forest products serve as a substitution for non-renewable materials, and increasing the use of wood to make textile to replace fossil-based and energy-intensive textile feedstocks is one of the best substitution strategies for emission-intensive synthetic textiles. So really our work was mainly about helping countries to reach global climate goals by moving towards a sustainable and circular bioeconomy. And we have been trying to work with stakeholders outside of the forestry sector to raise awareness about the impact on forest. So as I said, a focus on textile through the Forests for Fashion initiative. Three goals really show, raise awareness about the environmental and social impacts associated with textile fiber production, but also promote sustainable forest management through the use of certified wood pulp for textile fibers, and showcase the work of talented eco-designers that have placed sustainability at the core of their design. Let's not forget that when it comes to circularity, the design aspect is actually essential. This was actually launched in 2014 and is still ongoing today, and we'll see later with what initiatives in particular. We are talking about partnerships, so of course it's important for me to mention them. Our main partner in this has been the Program for Endorsement of Forest Certification, PEFC, who has undertaken several activities with us, but also, as you can see, other from the private sector, from the UN system, as well as from designers and other organizations and foundations. So it's really been a kind of diverse, but I would say quite effective partnership. Next slide is about a snapshot on past activities. We mentioned Michelle Yeoh, the UNDP Goodwill Ambassador. You've seen some exhibit. One was actually in New York, then we had one also in Geneva and one in Nairobi, really to also showcase what it is meant when we talk about forest fibers. Very important, if you want to Google, Made in Forest is a promotional video that explains how forest fibers and the sustainable ones are made and how they can be used. Recently, we also launched in October 2021 another initiative that's called Forests for Fashion Sports Challenge. This is because we realized that a lot of the oil-based materials are used in forest garments, and we do understand that some is for performance reasons, but for many of the sports clothing, there is no need actually to use oil-based materials. So we wanted to reach out beyond the fashion community, really to include the sports community and promote circularity and sustainability in sports clothing as well. Another recent initiative is also a podcast that I invite you to listen to. Is called One World, Zero Waste, the Circular Economy Explained, with one podcast specifically focused on forest products, also mentioning forest fibers. There's Lotta Lira, the CEO of forestry cooperative Sodra, talks about the role of forest fibers in advancing sustainability in the textile industry. Last but not least, let us tell you a bit of our outreach effort. This partnership was mainly created to be able to reach out also to the larger public to really share information on the sustainability of forest fibers and their availability. And you see some numbers there on social media, but also people engaged through exhibits and also companies and organizations we are trying to engage in our work, as well as, of course, those that really reach us through our events, but also our videos, and hopefully now also the podcast that was just recently launched. When we talk also about engagement and collaboration, let me talk about a partnership that is larger than our partnership, but this is really a partnership that was actually created by UNECE with its work on forest for fashion, and then it was enlarged to include all other UN offices that are dealing in one way or another with fashion-related issues. So this is a very important outreach effort also within the UN family. You see them all listed on this slide, and it's called the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. Very recently also we organized several events with them, including the Forest for Sustainable Lifestyle and a Circular Economy on fashion and packaging. So that's an important alliance to promote sustainable fibers also within UN and also beyond its boundaries. So hopefully our work from a small Forest for Fashion initiative that grew larger over the years, we can also reach out to much larger audiences through the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion. I stop here. I thank you very much and thank you again for this invitation, and looking forward to perhaps meeting and working with some of you on this very topic. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Paula. Anna, over to you for some additional remarks. Do you want to come up here? Or no? Go ahead. Yeah, I think that's okay.
I have a presentation.
Oh, you have a presentation. Okay. Come on.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, UNFF. Thank you, FAO. Thank you, UNECE, Paola, for inviting us to this session. We have been partnering with UNECE from a long time ago, dealing with forests, and afterwards dealing with fashion. And could it run my presentation, please? Oh, thank you. So next slide, please. I will speak about forests, and then I will speak about fashion. Next, please. What does forest mean? Next slide. What does forest mean for people, for society, for consumers? It means comfort and well-being. Next. But also CO2 sinks and water. Next. Biodiversity, soil protection. Next. Products and green jobs also. Next, please. Who we are PRC, an international non-profit organization. We care for forests. globally and locally by promoting sustainable forest management through certification with a bottom-up approach. We work towards the circular economy through traceability and responsible consumption of forest products. Next. We have a bottom-up approach. We come from the heart of the forest, for the smallholders, forest owners, and we have a multi-stakeholder engagement at the national and global level with a multi-purpose forestry, and we have been here for 20 years of continuous improvement and dialogue. Next, please. And in this bottom-up approach, we find ourselves with other top-down initiatives like the SDGs, where we, from the forest and the verification of sustainable forest management, we can say that we contribute to these goals that I have on the screen. But the most important for us is the number 17, which is the partnerships to achieve the goals. Next, please. Next, please. Now speak about forests. How many forests are managed under sustainable forest management? We have some over 330 million of hectares certified, which means 75% of the global certified forests in the world. And behind these figures, we have 1 million of forest owners working sustainably in their forests. We have 55 countries with schemes, so you can have certified forests in 55 countries around the world, more than 22,000 of PSC certified companies in 78 countries. Next, please. So what is it for? What do we want this kind of certification? To meet the climate targets, to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to respond to consumers' demand and reduce the risk of reputational damage of the companies. They need to provide their raw materials and the products coming from sustainably obtained sources. Increase the business resilience and, of course, the security of being based on international recognized guidelines like ISO, ILO. The 8 fundamental conventions of ILO are within our chain of custody standard and within our sustainable forest management certification. So social issues are really very much important when we speak about sustainability, and also the UN. Please, next. And now I spoke about forests, and now I speak about fashion. Here we have Maria Lafuente, our designer. Next, please. This is the collaboration with UNECE and FAO, with the Forestry Timber section, Forest for Fashion, bringing together key players from both forest and fashion worlds. Next, please. This is how we do it. Why are we partnering with UNECE? Because we want to speak about sustainably obtained garments coming from the forest, these fibers coming from the forest. We have a sustainably managed forest, certified forest, then we have the whole chain of value with the dissolving pulp certified, with the fiber, with the yarn, with the fabrics, dressmaking, and the dresses, the garments we find in the shops. We want them to speak about their sustainable origin, to have a label that speaks about sustainably managed chain of custody and sustainably sourced. So the origin of these cellulosic fibers. Next, please. These are some figures coming from different companies in different parts of the world. Next, please. And these are some global production and trends based on different cellulosic fibers. The report in 2020 expects some 8.0 growth of the fibers, of the cellulosic fibers, but the real figures after the having 2020 already here we learned that the consumption was little lesser than it was expected. So the trend is to have a more sustainable consumption. That's what we want, sustainable consumption of forest-based fibers. Thank you. Next, please. This is the sample that we went to the high-level political forum in the UN headquarters in New York with the fashion, with different garments you can see there. I can't remember the delegates coming in and saying, what is this? And we said, this is also forests. This is forest for fashion. Next, please. This is another example. Next, please. And we also partnered with UNECE and FAO coming to the presentation of the UN Alliance in Nairobi. Next, please. And this is the booth we have there with some dresses coming for different designers. I can see there Maria Lafuente's design in white and red, really beautiful, and some others from other designers. Next, please. These are some examples. Next. Next, please. And what did we explain also? We also explained that what does this have to do with the SDG? We spoke about cotton farming, the responsibility of 24% of the insecticides and 11% of pesticides. We spoke about diversion of water and pollution by cotton growing, all the damage that the textile industry does to the planet. So what we want to reverse these kind of trends and contribute with the forest-based fibers. Next, please. This is another example. We came together with, this is 17, SDG 17. Clear, we come with Textil Santanderina, UNECE, with Forest for Fashion to Première Vision in Paris in 2018. Next, please. And this is Maria Lafuente Runaway, and this one is from 2018, but we have every year a couple from fall and spring. Next, please. And we are moving forward. Next, please. This is what we are contributing to the social forum of the fashion industry in Spain, with many very well-known companies like Inditex, Tendam, El Corte Inglés, Mango. We have, and also with civil society organizations like Consumers, Oxfam, Intermom, and universities, and so on. And we are participating in two groups, fashion, sustainability, and climate change, and worldwide supply chain. And we are leading the working group of the UN Alliance for Sustainable Fashion in collaboration with UNECE. Next, please. And last but not least, this is our current campaign in PFC that we expect to have the support of the UNECE, of UNFF. This is Fashions Change, Forests Stay, and it's our international campaign. We are challenging the companies to do better in the textile sector, to raise awareness on responsible sourcing for sustainably managed forests, empower companies to include PFC into the responsible sourcing policy, and explain traceability and business benefit of the chain of custody. Who are our target audiences? Fashion brands and retailers and supply chain companies, yard, textile, the whole chain of value of the textile company. So this is the joint work we are undertaking with the United Nations bodies, with UNECE and FAO and some other partners. Thank you very much for having this opportunity of explaining, and we wait for you. Any information, I am at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Ana. I think it's a great reminder to us where forest products and products for the forest really are just about everywhere. Forest for fashion, food, and provide so many opportunities to substitute for other less sustainable, climatically less sustainable production. So thanks for that. I'm looking at our organizers to see if we have a few minutes. I really don't like to end a session without at least giving an opportunity for any burning questions from the audience? I don't know if anybody out there wants to. Yes. Gotta remember. It's right there.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Anybody with a burning question? If not, I know that we need to wrap. Just a couple things, and I would urge our organizers, UNFF, obviously AFCO, other organizations that are working on this effort, all those that are with us on the stage in these excellent initiatives that have been presented. There are some questions that I think, given more time and perhaps over time, we can help answer or explore. With these kinds of initiatives, what we would all benefit from is understanding or hearing about governance structures, because there's different governance to these initiatives. Some are formalized, some are governmental, some are civil society based. These are successful initiatives, and we can learn how we can structure our own and newer or the next collaborations by understanding how we govern these initiatives. One of the areas that I know is challenging for some initiatives like this is funding, sustainability of funding, length of funding, what organizations help support these initiatives. That can give us great insight how we might be able to develop these more longer lasting initiatives in the future. There's other questions like that I think it would be helpful if UNFF in their efforts and AFCO as they continue to highlight these kinds of opportunities. Finally, I just want to also note that how do we engage with who we don't know or haven't engaged with before? What are the techniques that these initiatives and efforts use to identify stakeholders? How do we bring them into these processes and help them overcome some of the challenges they may have in engaging? Those are also areas where I think we can learn and share ideas as we look to strengthen our own efforts and build on them. And I just want to ask Barbara very quickly, can we ask the panel to respond to some of that, or do we just leave with some ideas and questions? What would you prefer? Sorry. 1 minute, of course. Sorry?
No, I was saying that I have another meeting, another appointment.
Oh, sorry.
Right now.
Okay.
But anyhow, I think the questions are posed, and we have lots of considerations to take home. Some of the issues raised here were clearly pointed to this need for all of us to keep engaging in this very wide-ranging dialogue. And I would just finalize by saying that good examples like the Forest Dialogue at Yale, the Brazilian Forest Dialogue, as you just remembered, Gary, and the coalition in Brazil that I'm representing here today are probably, most likely, found in many other countries. So this is the way to go. This is how we should move ahead. So thank you very much once again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jose Carlos. Just real quick, Anna or Milagre or Natalia, any final words?
I think I would like to just take this opportunity to recognizing everything that has been shared today. I think we need to make these partnerships more visible, not only within the countries where they are happening or the regions where they are happening, but everywhere. If this is the way we need to go to achieve our goals, then let's make these very successful initiatives, some of which were mentioned today, more visible and touching upon all those critical issues that Gary mentioned before on governance, on funding, some of the innovative funding that we also heard about here, local, domestic funding. Let's look at those, let's explore them, and let's share experiences. Thank you.
Thanks, Milagre.
Well, on my side, I will say that we take this initiative, and others, we have also an initiative regarding Taste of the Forests initiative. We also have that one. And when I remember when I came to Africa, to Mozambique, and to Kenya, I spoke with women about Forest for Fashion. I think it's a way of having new activities that are possible to be done maybe it can be scalable. I mean, it can be a small size or big size. So I think it's a very good way out for cooperation and doing things. So Forest for Fashion, for instance, is a very good initiative to speak with different regions, with women especially. Mm-hmm. And I think that these kind of initiatives are really very good to partner with. As Mila said, we need to spread what our experiences and to share our experience with others. So thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Natalia, any last words?
No, that's all said.
All right, thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining us both in person and online. I hope you found today's discussion and presentations interesting. I really enjoyed the paper, the poster, and of course the 4 excellent initiatives. Again, this is a conversation that should continue as we think about how to strengthen these kinds of partnerships. So please continue to share information. And finally, let me thank the event organizers, Barbara and her team at UNFF, and the AFCO Secretariat. So with that, thank you very much.